Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody, on what is another sunny day for the third in our series of lockdown lunch and learns. Today, we're going to look at the opportunity in automation and some of the pitfalls in how to achieve it. But first of all, let's introduce who we've got here today. So I'm Richard Higginbotham. I'm co-founder of Optism. We help clients release capacity, reduce cost, and enhance capability by working smarter with their processes. I'm delighted to be joined by my friend and technology partner, Ramesh. Hi, Ramesh.
Hi, Richard, and good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here. I'm one of the co-founders of Sevita. We focus on enabling organizations of all sizes to, get automation enabled very quickly, and we work very closely with Richard to make that happen.
Okay, so format today is going to be much the same as we've done in previous weeks. We try and whip through this ideally so that we get everybody away and back into their day by 1 o'clock. So we've got a short discussion through Ramesh and I that will come through and leave kind of somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes for question and answers at the end. And really the focus for this is about, well, it's releasing human capacity, robotic process automation. I mean, it's a technology that's been evolving for a good number of years. In its very early stages, I came across it 20 years ago, and I know, Ramesh, you've worked with it for a good number of years as well.
Exactly. I mean, it's technology's been around for a few years, though it's got into prominence, I would say, in the last few years because it's become affordable and available to the mass market. Earlier, it was the purview of the large insurance and the insurance companies and the big banks.
And I guess one of the reasons why it's become so prominent, I mean, this figure that I've got on screen at the moment is a figure from a McKinsey report in 2018, 2019, where just under a third of working hours in a modern economy is spent on data entry, data processing. I think elsewhere in a similar survey, I think it's up to 80% of hours spent in the back office are on those similar tasks that can be easily automated today and are holding down human capacities, so their knowledge, their skills, their experience, the creativity, the judgment, the innovation. It's all tied down while people are constrained with their fingers on keyboards. And that's exactly what robotic process automation, RPA, is there to get rid of. It is those repetitive, role-based tasks, activities that require little judgment that the technology eats for breakfast. And we've introduced your friend Ramesh in the last two webinars, so we may as well bring Joe into it now. Joe is your robot.
Exactly. So Joe is the friendly robot that you see in the middle. So what Joe can do is effectively, any activity that human performs on a computer, which is obviously repetitive, which is rule-based. It can be, you need to take data from a set of emails and you need to load up an ERP system with it. It could be a regular movement of files and files into different folders based on rules. It could be simply going through a various number of systems because you might have different systems to do different tasks, but you don't have a single view of the data. It could be that you can train Joe to go into different systems, get the data consolidated into a report that you need. Wherever you see people with two different screens doing one set of activity on one and the other set on the other, and a human needs to keep in touch with both, get Joe trained on it. It'll be super fast, very highly productive, and it'll free you up to do more productive work.
And this technology has come to prominence as well as people have done more and more systems integration, they've built more powerful systems. You move from a very manual operation to predominantly workflow automated process. But you still have those, I guess, what you call residual tasks, the bits that the system can't get to. So you mentioned getting information from ERP systems and loading it from an email and loading it into the ERP system, doing it into case management tools, all of those kind of activities. You also have a kind of those, I guess, consequential tasks. So those exceptions, those cases where it needs to come out, information needs to be gathered from somewhere else or checked against somewhere else. We see that a lot in credit and risk processes, invoice processes, where something comes out of the process, needs to be validated somewhere else, and then goes back in. Those are the kind of manual tasks that robotic process automation is doing around the edges of core systems. Now, there's been a lot of hype about robotic process automation. So naturally, there's some things that are true and some not so true. One of the biggest is it's low cost, and it can be automated fast. Processes can be automated in days. Now, they're both true, aren't they, Ramesh?
Yes, both are true, in a way where, if you want a single robot and, you want to try a few things out on a computer, yes, you can get a cheap robot out there. And, you can trial out a few processes in days and, do it. If it's not up to scale, if it's a mini project, absolutely. So if you look at it very neutrally as a fact, it's a fact.
Okay, very good. Now, moving into some of the claims from some of the vendors is if you can build a flowchart, if you can work in Microsoft Visio, you can develop robotic process automation. I think we're now getting firmly into the category of myth. Yes, the interface in robotic process automation software is often flowchart based. It is very visual. It is a low code environment, but it still requires somebody with that mental discipline of a developer to think through the logic and solve the problems. And part of that is because the qualities of a robot are different to the qualities of a human, where you or I would follow a task through, each step of a task through sequentially. Actually, you can bundle a number of things up together as a robot and use the power of memory to then go to the next stage.
Exactly, Richard. In fact, one of the key points there is, a lot of programs, technology programs or automation programs don't get off the ground because you either oversimplify it, like you said, if you can build a flowchart, you can do it. It's not the silver bullet for everything, or you overcomplicate it, saying that let's, re-visualize our entire process set and then get it to an optimized state before automation. So there is a middle ground in these things, and you need to be very pragmatic about how you approach which process you choose.
And in terms of software, if you're looking at the processing requirements for a bot, it feels like you only need a bot on a machine to get going. And unfortunately, there's some myth to that as well. Is yes, you can have a bot on one machine running some processes, but actually the moment that you are at any kind of scale, then it needs a lot more than just the bot in the background, which brings us to some realities. So yes, a license for a bot may be less than $10,000, £10,000, but it will require some development resource. So I've thrown in a cost to the business there of £50,000, Ramesh. I think when we were talking before, you're saying that can be conservative nowadays.
That can be purely because of the demand in the marketplace. You get a good developer and you train the person, and then swish, he's been sucked in by another company. So development, developers are hot resources. They're very key. The market's hot for them, and the cost is going up as well.
Okay, so immediately the business case has started to change somewhat. It's not now £10,000. I'm £60,000 into the hole in the next 12 months. So I need to find a number of processes to generate acceptable return on investment from that. Well, if I'm going to have to go and find and understand processes, I'm probably going to need some business analyst, project management resource. And again, that's going to add a different layer of cost into there. So now to the scale I need to get to deploy and generate ROI means actually I'm going to need more than just one bot. And if I'm going to need more than just one bot, I'm going to need some form of server infrastructure to host it on, and I'm going to need some orchestration across multiple bots, so that the right robot is doing the right activity at the right time.
Exactly. And then your costs are going up 6-7 times what you initially planned, purely from an infrastructure point of view.
Yeah. So actually, it then becomes much like a development team. You end up with an RPA team. You hear the term centers of excellence bandied around by consultancies and vendors, because that's what it takes to do that. And the likely investment is going to be in the region of £250,000 to £500,000,
Yes.
and that's before we've automated a process.
Correct. And depending on scale, that can be a conservative figure as well.
Yeah. So immediately, what that starts to do is it starts to push it, out of the reach of of some SMEs. Capital's always difficult to get hold of if you've got competing things that you need to get investment for. Chances are it's going to be something that's going to be transformational to the business, that's going to be further up the ladder. Crikey, for charities and the like, where there are a lot of manual processes, that just starts to push it out. And as we kind of see, delivery options mean that you can flex some of the impact in there. So if we were going to look at, it's quite often low cost to do the DIY principle, but you've got that period before it cuts through that cost that you start to generate return on investment. And that might be, depending on the speed of deployment, depending on the size of the RPA team that you've got, that could be 6, 9, 12, 18 months before that line breaks through and you're making return on investment. Another option is to build with a partner. Certainly building with a partner means that you're calling on existing development resource, which means that you can steepen that curve and deploy faster. There's a downside to that though, Ramesh, isn't there, is that it slims down that shaded area above the cost of ROI.
Exactly. And till you get to a point of scale where you need to in-source it, that is going to be very thin.
Yeah. Now, in our last webinar, we discussed the term I hate, which is the change stack, but it's that to-do list for IT change and transformation, the queue, which is typically made up of two elements. So transformational changes, big investment in infrastructure and new systems, and then changes to existing systems. And the fact that there's always a queue that exists because you are constrained by budget. So your total capital budget and operational budget for development change constrains the amount of change that you can be delivering at any one time, which means that you end up with a third queue, which are candidate changes that are waiting to get worked on. There's a danger in this that a lot of the claims that are made and a lot of the qualities of the technology in robotic process automation, which is its speed to deploy, are lost because actually what we've just done is created another queue for the business. And an anecdote that we shared last week is when you've created that queue, is that creates its own inertia. I used to work with a guy at Centrica who used to come to these painful meetings where we would argue over whose change was going to get worked on. And he would consistently say, change is something everybody else gets done and I just get to hear about. After a while, if it wasn't getting done, he didn't ask. And that has a big bearing on organizations' agility, doesn't it, Ramesh?
Yes, in fact, it has a bearing on agility and also a significant bearing on realization of benefits faster. So there can be quite a few cost saving programs or improvement programs, which you just need a small tweak, but it's lying there in your backlog and it's not being driven because you don't have the time to get to it.
So speed to get to it is one thing. There's also an understanding of what is possible. If people experience change happening to them, they can see what the possibilities are. There's a client that you talk about quite a lot, Ramesh, who came with a small number of opportunities, but seeing what happened kind of opened everybody's mind to what was possible, didn't it?
In fact, the exact words was, we were speaking to the operations head, and he said they held an innovation day. These were in the days of non-social distancing, when people could gather around in a room. And they had around 16 different ideas that came up from the team. So the ops head asked them, I mean, I've been working with you guys for over 3 years, and I've never had so many ideas come in a single day. Well, what's prompted the change? And the simple answer was that, well, if we had told you these ideas earlier, we would have to do it manually. So now we've got Joe to do it. We bring up the ideas. Let's see if it can be done.
Yeah. And I think as we experience on a daily basis, that starts to become the norm with clients, is as fast as you deliver one process, the people you're working with are asking you, can you do this? Can you do the other? And your new candidate processes start to emerge very, very fast.
Correct.
And this is why we term kind of our way of working something of a fresh approach. It's deploying process as a service in many respects, micro outsourcing. You're able to deploy Joe from the cloud, Ramesh.
Yes.
But it's a ready, trained and ready to work Joe. Now, what that means is there's no or minimal upfront cost to the client. Really, they just have to show us the process so that we can go and train, and they don't pay until we can deliver the process. That brings forward that net benefit almost immediate, and they pay for what they use. So if it costs 2x to run a process today, and the automated process is 1x, it's a simple business case, and they pay monthly. So that net benefit is realized immediately, which brings about a certain scalability. We've just done something with a health charity now where we did the first process in January, February. The organization understood it. We got the second process done in March. And then we've just done another one in days in April, because what they've seen is actually we can look at a process, have us look at it, have us deliver a process and generate the benefits immediately. So that really does start to release the burden on the team, start releasing some humans for higher value activity. But as those humans get released for additional activity, they identify new opportunities that can be acted on almost immediately. So
exactly.
You have both. Sorry, Ramesh.
Yeah, no, just to add to that point, Richard, where you were talking earlier about the change stack, when we say net benefit, it's literally 3 to 4 weeks before you start seeing the benefits, even in the example that you were talking about. And some of these processes which were automated, which was in their change stack, and they had a longer term plan to do it, maybe 6-12 months down the line. Literally in 3 weeks, it's now being automated, and the person who was actually doing it manually is now free to do other things. They are able to do more with the stuff that they have. They're a small business; they're not very large, and for them, when the volumes grew, they didn't have the capacity to take on additional people, so they could manage the whole thing with their existing staff at less of the cost.
Yeah. And something that comes through that people realize is it's easy. I know that there's a call taking place actually as we're talking now, which is we've it was a 40-minute call that allowed us to understand the process. That's what your developers have used to develop it. We then have a demonstration call with the users to validate that we've got it correct. We refine it, we test live, but that demonstration, refinement and monitored putting live, probably a couple of hours of time for the client's team. Now they're on refinement calls on those unknown unknowns that even they didn't realize happened in their process, because now we're able to see what a robot does at scale. So it is fast. That's a process that we didn't see until early April, and has now been operational for 2 weeks.
Correct.
So this fresh approach, so we mentioned no upfront cost or minimal upfront cost for just that training and development piece. It delivers immediate savings. It's secure and compliant. I mean, you've invested a lot of time and effort in ensuring that there is a robust platform that you're deploying from. But
yes.
The ability to be able to deploy that quickly gives you speed and agility. So it really is from analysis to deployment in 3 to 4 weeks.
Correct.
And frictionless for those users. So, I mean, as I summarize, I can see we've got a couple of questions come in here over the chat. If there's any more, please fire them in. We'll get to those in a second. I'll warn you now, Ramesh, tough crowd. We've got a couple of good questions here. But just to summarize this. So, robotic process automation, RPA, can release humans from repetitive work, and it can happen quickly. But it's definitely not as simple as just buying a bot. And I hope that simplified, constructed cost case that we kind of pulled together before about the RPA team kind of got that across. Doing it the traditional way can take time to deliver ROI. So if you're a Barclays Bank, if you're a Centrica, if you are a major company, that's fine. That's how you're used to dealing with change and transformation programs. But for an SME, that can be really, really tough to have to spend a lot of money to then wait 9, 12 months plus to see that return starting to come in. It can also create another change queue, which is a contributor to what we term productivity lock, and slow things down. Fresh approach to micro outsourcing can definitely accelerate deployment and ROI. And scalability and agility create their own momentum, releasing savings and capacity. So let's get to the questions. Let's see another one come in there. So I'm going to start you off with the tough one here, Ramesh.
Sure.
So one challenge, I think somebody's been looking at our ROI cases. Doesn't micro outsourcing cost more in the long term?
I guess it's a question we do come across often. So it's if you look at it very simplistically, when you have when you're starting off on the automation journey, and you're thinking of 1 or 2 processes, 3 processes, it's a great place to start, because you don't want to have a fixed investment. You don't want to have you don't want to buy licenses. You don't want to be burdened with hiring people, go through the rigmarole of a technology transformation program yourself. And that's where you get benefits very quickly, like Richard explained, in 2 to 3 weeks, with zero investment required, with without any infrastructure requirements. But then as you begin to scale, you reach a state where in 12 to 18 months, you got a number of processes automated, and you have the ability to start. You understand automation very well, and you have the ability to scale much faster. At that point, it probably is worthwhile looking at what it would cost internally versus outsourcing. And in our experience, it's a curve. So early on, absolute makes sense to outsource it, micro outsource it. Mid stages, where you have anywhere between 8 to 15 processes, still worth to micro outsource it. When you go beyond that stage, when you have significant amount, maybe a number of departments across the organization, then that's where you need to start off bringing it internally. And the beauty of a micro outsource model is that bringing it internal is just a matter of switching it on, because you have the experience, you have the processes, process documentation. All you need to do is get the infrastructure, get the team onboarded, and start developing those processes internally and move it on. Until that point, you're self-sufficient. You still have the benefits from the micro outsource process generating value anyway.
Brilliant. So if I can summarize there is, yes, if you chose to only have a micro outsource in and you went big, yes, in the long term that would cost more.
Yeah.
But I think if what I'm hearing is correct, is once you've developed a process, it can be insourced very simply. If you're only doing a few processes, micro outsourcing will be cheaper. But hybrid works very, very well. So if there is an existing internal RPA program, then actually the fresh approach, the micro outsourcing approach, can pick up the early stage opportunities fast.
Absolutely.
And then migrate them into the center of excellence, to use a vendor and consultancy term. Got a couple here. Got a few here from the same person here, actually. So I'm going to pick these up. Actually, what I'll do is I'll see if I can pick these up as one. So any particular sectors adopting RPA more than others? I think if you were to look globally at the people making big investment, there's some obvious places that are doing it. Banking has done a lot of RPA. Utilities, because there are God knows how many manual and repetitive processes that take place in there. But actually what we're seeing, and Ramesh will back me up with this, is across all sectors. I think some sectors are more switched on to the possibility, but actually anywhere that has to take incoming requests that arrive on a portal or via email and to get them into their operational system, there's usually somewhere that RPA can be a benefit there. Finance processes, invoicing processes, goods receipt and dispatch all tend to have people sat in front of twin screens doing stuff manually. And we see a lot of that. So yeah, I think we've got charity, we've worked in finance, we've worked in sales, we've worked in legal, we've worked in an accounts. It's once you start to get the grip of it, then people do it. How the return on investment is delivered, a very, very good question. So there are obvious places to look. So cost saving is the first one. If it's costing you 2x to do manually, and it will cost 1x to do it automatically, there's a headcount saving. At the risk of banging on from my past, I did used to work with a finance director who, as soon as we mentioned a headcount saving, would always ask for the names and payroll numbers, because part of an FTE is not a whole FTE saving. But actually, this is a term you use a lot, Ramesh, is outcome benefits are more often where that ROI is realized, where people have been released to be more productive elsewhere. We see this in sales call centers, where elements of their task, so quote generation or getting prices from multiple suppliers, combining that and putting them into a report to present to a client, that might be something that takes 20 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes every time it needs to be done. But 85–90% of that job can be done by a robot, leaving the human to do what the human is best at, and creating a 10, 20, 30% increase in productivity from a sales call center has enormous benefits.
Hey, Richard, sorry, my machine crashed and I left the call. I'm back in. You were asking me a question. I don't know where it's reached.
It's all right. I saw that you dropped off. Hopefully I managed to do that. But here's one for you to get your head around straight away. We've got another question here. What role does artificial intelligence play in RPA today, and how will that change in future?
Okay, that's a great question, actually. I think there is a lot of hype around artificial intelligence in RPA, and there is this big hoo-ha about intelligent automation going on. There is some merit to that statement, but very, very simply put, RPA is great when you deal with simple processes which can be replicated on a rule-based and where the data is structured. The word structured is important. So when I say structured data, it's about where you can read it from an email or an Excel sheet or an ERP or a CRM application or a portal, anything where you can have an identifiable form for the data. It can be in text or numerals or wherever. Where you have unstructured data, so unstructured data can be something like a scanned image, right? If you need to make sense of a scanned image, then you probably need OCR, optical character recognition, or other tools to be able to make sense of it. When you reach into the realms of unstructured data like scanned images, voice, understanding free flow text and making sense out of it, that's where artificial intelligence steps in. And today you have, I would say, if you look at most RPA tools, you have some level of artificial intelligence incorporated in it. It's evolving. Some companies profess to have it more than others. But even now, it's at the very basic level. It's on, reading scanned images and a bit of natural language processing, where you can understand free flow text. I would say it's very early stage in the marketplace. In the next, 3 to 4 years, I'm sure the market will evolve, the products will evolve, and AI will gain more prominence. But for most businesses, simple RPA can give you significant benefits. Even without AI, it can give you significant benefits as we speak.
Yep, and it's something, having dabbled numerous times in artificial intelligence over the last sort of 6-7 years. There's lots that can be done, but artificial intelligence comes with its own downfalls. If you're not careful with it, it can lead you down dead ends. So we've done some stuff in marketing around creating predictive offers based on behaviors and profiles. And if the individual is never served with content on particular topics, then there's a danger that they never ever will be. So you have to throw in variables outside of the rule set to provide better learning experience for the robot. I think the best term I've seen is actually augmented intelligence is probably a better way of doing it. Where AI tends to work really well is when it's working alongside a human. So it reduces the number of options that a human has to deal with to apply judgment. Then the human judgment and the ability to do lateral thinking then really starts to come into its own.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've gone over a little bit there, but some great questions in there. If there's any more questions that come to you that you would like answering that we've not been able to get to today, again, as always, my email address is richard@optism, which is optsm.co.uk, if you want to get that across to me. It remains for me to say, I hope that was useful. I trust that's been valuable for everybody. And as we tie things up, if there's anything you want to come back to, the recording of this will be made available on demand on our website later on today. And we will be sitting down again, not quite this time next week. We're on Friday next week for releasing productivity lock. So actually where those constraints of not a lot of change budget, a lot of people being busy being busy. How do you release productivity lock using the technology that we've just discussed? So Ramesh, thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks everyone for attending this afternoon. It's been great chatting.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody. Enjoy your bank holiday weekend. Thank you.